The wind tore through Dry Creek like it had a grudge. Grit hissed across the wooden planks of the main street, and the sign above the general store creaked like an old bone. Folks had gathered near the feed merchant's wagon. Thin faces, hollow eyes, voices cracked from thirst. The sky was white as ash, and the sun sat like a curse above them all. The deal was already in motion. A man in a sweat-stained hat gripped a little girl by the arm, too tight. Her dress was faded to colorless rags, her feet bare, her eyes wide and still. The merchant squinted from his wagon seat, a burlap sack of grain beside him. He looked from the girl to the sack like a man comparing weights. "She's strong enough," the father said. "She can work. You'll get your worth." The merchant spat a thin stream of tobacco into the dust. "She's just a child. Ain't worth half that grain." "She eats little," the mother said from behind him. Her voice was thin as the wind. "She can clean, haul, whatever you need. We got no other way." The merchant leaned back, tapping his chin. The onlookers shifted. No one spoke. Dry Creek had seen bad things before, but never quite like this. Then came the voice. "Don't look like a fair trade to me." The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. Heads turned. He stood at the edge of the crowd, a tall man, coat long and travel-worn, hat shadowing his face. Dust clung to him like it belonged there. His horse waited behind him, a dark shape against the sun. The father's grip tightened on the girl's arm. "Ain't none of your affair, stranger." The man stepped closer. "Slow. Calm." "Maybe not," he said, "but I got a feeling it's about to be." The merchant's laugh was dry. "You looking to buy, mister? We're fresh out of bargains." The stranger didn't answer. His boots ground into the dirt. His eyes, gray, cold, steady, went from the girl to the sack, then back again. "How much grain you want for her?" The merchant blinked. "You serious?" The man nodded once. "I don't deal in girls, but I got no mind to see a child traded for food." He reached into his coat. The crowd stiffened, hands hovered near belts, but he pulled out only a single silver coin. He flipped it once in the air, caught it, then dropped it into the dust at the merchant's boots. "Call it down payment," he said. "You can feed your bellies with what pride you got left." The merchant sneered. "1 coin for a sack worth a season." "Take the coin," the stranger said, voice flat as a gun barrel. "And you keep your grain." The father turned, jaw tight, eyes burning. "We ain't asking charity, mister." The stranger looked at him, long and quiet. "Ain't offering it." The girl's eyes lifted, the first sign of life in her face. A breeze caught her hair, tangling it across her cheeks. "I'll take her home," the stranger said finally. Someone laughed, nervous and sharp. "You got a home for her, cowboy." He didn't look back. "Got a roof, got a fire. That's more than this trade's got." The merchant's smile faded. He studied the man. Something in the way he stood, in the way the crowd fell silent around him, made the air turn heavy. The girl's father shifted. "You're a fool to take another mouth in this drought." "Maybe," the man said, "but a fool sleeps better than a coward." The mother started crying, not loud, just a cracked sound that carried. She knelt, pulled the girl close, whispered something in her hair, and then stood. Her hands trembled as she pushed her forward. "Go on now," she said. The stranger crouched, slow as if he was afraid to break her. He touched the brim of his hat. "Name's Jonas," he said softly. "You right good." The girl shook her head, barely breathing. "Then hold tight." He stood, lifted her gently, and set her in the saddle before mounting behind her. His horse shifted, snorting against the dust. The merchant scowled. "You'll regret it, mister. That one's more trouble than she's worth." Jonas looked down at him, a single glance that carried the weight of a drawn gun. "We'll find out," he said. He turned the horse toward the open road. The girl looked back once, at the mother wiping her eyes, at the father staring at the dirt, at the sack of grain that wasn't traded after all. The wind rose again, pushing the dust between them like a curtain closing on a play that no one wanted to watch. Jonas didn't speak as they rode. The sun fell lower, and the town of Dry Creek shrank behind them until it was nothing but a smudge against the glare. The girl sat straight, silent, clutching the saddle horn like it was her only anchor. Miles later, when the heat began to fade and the horizon burned red, she finally whispered, "Why'd you take me?" Jonas looked ahead, voice quiet. "Because they shouldn't have tried to trade you." He didn't add more, and she didn't ask again. The desert stretched before them, endless, empty, beautiful in its cruelty. Behind them, the story of Dry Creek began to twist and grow. By sundown, folks in the saloon were already telling it different ways. How the stranger had stared down a man twice his size, how he'd paid with gold, how his eyes glowed silver in the light. By nightfall, they'd given him a name. They called him the man who bought mercy with nothing but his word. And long after the dust settled, when travelers passed through that forgotten town, they said you could still hear it, the sound of one coin hitting the ground, and a voice saying, calm as judgment. The coyotes were already circling when Jonas drew his rifle. Their eyes flashed in the dark, low, yellow sparks weaving through the sagebrush. The firelight flickered against his face, cutting the lines deeper, casting the hollows in shadow. The girl sat near the flames, knees pulled to her chest, her thin shoulders trembling beneath his old coat. "Don't move," he said quietly. The wind was sharp, carrying the scent of dust and fear. The coyotes crept closer, hunger in every step. Jonas cocked the rifle, the sound like thunder in the still night. One shot cracked through the silence. A coyote yelped, spun, and vanished into the black. The rest scattered, tails flashing pale under the moonlight. The echo rolled across the empty mesa, bouncing off the red rock walls that rose like sleeping giants around their camp. Then only the wind remained, whispering through the dry grass, brushing over the girl's hair. Jonas lowered the rifle and sat again beside the fire. He tossed another stick into the flames. Sparks drifted upward, catching in the wind before dying in the dark. "You all right?" he asked without looking at her. She nodded, but her voice caught when she spoke. "You didn't even aim." He gave a faint, tired smile. "Didn't have to." Silence again, except for the crack of wood and the far-off cry of another coyote, miles away now. The girl studied him in the flicker of light. "You've done this before." Jonas didn't answer. He stared into the fire, seeing something else entirely. Smoke from a burning town, the flash of a rifle muzzle, a child's cry cut short by chaos. He closed his eyes. "You got a name?" he asked. "Mary Lou." He nodded once. "Mary Lou." He rolled the name slow, like he was testing how it fit in the quiet. "You got anyone waiting for you?" She shook her head. "No one." He leaned back against his saddle. The firelight caught the edge of scar that ran along his jaw, white against sun-worn skin. "Then you do now." The wind rose again, carrying the sound of a far-off horse neighing somewhere beyond the ridge. Jonas's head turned. He listened, still as stone. "What is it?" Mary Lou whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then, low and grim, "Riders." He stood, eyes fixed on the horizon. The moonlight spilled silver over the land, enough to see 3 faint shadows moving along the ridgeline. He sighed. "We'll move before dawn." Mary Lou frowned. "Why are they following us?" Jonas adjusted the rifle strap over his shoulder. "Because they think they can." He kicked sand over the fire, snuffing it out. The world went dark, the stars burning sharp and cold above. The girl's small hand reached for his coat in the dark, and he let her hold on. They walked by moonlight, boots crunching in the grit, horse reins creaking soft. The mesas loomed around them like ghosts of stone. By the time dawn bled over the horizon, they reached the rim of the canyon. Jonas's home, if it could be called that. A single shack of sun-bleached boards, half hidden in rock shadow, a corral of leaning posts, and a well that coughed dust more often than water. Mary Lou looked at it with quiet eyes. "You live here?" He nodded, long enough to forget how to leave. Inside, the cabin smelled of smoke and silence. A rifle hung above the hearth. 2 tin cups, a Bible missing its cover, and a small wooden cross lay on the mantel, polished by years of being held. Jonas poured her water from a cracked jug. She drank fast, and he let her. Outside, the wind whispered against the canyon walls, that low, endless sound of emptiness that made men lonely or mad. He set down his cup, eyes distant. "You ever been to Canyon Creek?" Mary Lou shook her head. "No." Good, he said. Ain't much there but ghosts. She tilted her head. You been there? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into a chest near his bed and pulled out an old, tarnished badge. No shine left, the lettering worn thin. Bounty Division, U.S. Marshal Service. She stared. You were law. Was, he said, voice flat. A long time ago. He turned the badge over once, then set it down beside the cross. Law didn't hold much weight out here. Men like me had to carry justice on their own. Mary Lou watched him, her small hands fidgeting in her lap. Is that why you don't talk much? Jonas smiled faintly. That, and I found silence makes fewer enemies. A sound broke the air, a distant clatter of hooves echoing through the canyon. Jonas's head lifted. The look in his eyes changed. The quiet man gone, replaced by the one who'd lived through ambushes and gunfire. He moved to the doorway, rifle in hand, scanning the rim. The morning light caught the glint of something metal, binoculars, maybe far up on the ridge. He turned to Mary Lou. Stay low. Don't speak. Who are they? The kind that smell blood before it's drawn. He stepped outside, dust swirling around his boots. The canyon held its breath. He scanned the rim again, nothing now. Just silence and sun. When he came back in, Mary Lou was still crouched near the door, clutching the small cross from the mantel. You believe in God? He asked. She looked up. Sometimes. When I have to. He nodded. That's good enough. He sat across from her, the rifle resting between them, his face a shadow in the dim light. You asked why I took you, he said. Truth is, I don't rightly know. Maybe I was just tired of watching people trade souls for survival. She blinked. You think they'll come back? Oh, they'll come. His voice dropped lower. They always do. The wind pushed through the cracks in the walls, making the cabin moan. The light shifted, red dust swirling through a slant of sun, painting everything in a dull, ghostly glow. Jonas leaned back, eyes half shut. When they do, you hide in that barn. You hear gunfire, you don't look back. You ride east till the sun burned your shoulders. Mary Lou frowned. What about you? He smiled, just enough to show it was real once. Don't you worry none. They used to call me a ghost for a reason. Outside, the wind howled through the canyon like it knew his name. And up on the ridge, 3 riders watched the smoke from his chimney twist skyward, thin, gray, and fading into the wide blue. They didn't move. Not yet. But the mesa had already chosen its ghosts. The first bullet shattered the window. Jonas hit the floor before the glass even settled. The second shot tore through the doorframe, spitting splinters across the table where Mary Lou had been sitting moments before. Down, he barked, grabbing her by the arm and dragging her behind the stove. The air stank of gunpowder and smoke. Outside, the horses snorted and circled. He counted the boots by their sound. 3, maybe 4 men. One of them shouted, voice rough and sure. Clay, you in there, you old ghost. We ain't here for you. Just the girl. You hand her over. We'll let you keep breathing. Jonas's jaw clenched. He moved to the corner, peering through the crack in the wall. Dust hung heavy in the sunlight. 3 riders. One of them he recognized. The merchant from Dry Creek, hat pulled low, eyes mean with hunger and fear. Jonas turned to the girl. Barn. Crawl low. When I start shooting, you run. Mary Lou shook her head, eyes wide. I won't leave you. You will, he said, voice flat as steel. That's an order. He slid another cartridge into the Winchester, thumb steady, the motion too practiced to be new. Then he leaned against the doorframe, silent as a shadow. The man outside called again. Last chance, Clay. She ain't yours. Never was. Jonas pushed the door open slow, the hinges whining like an animal in pain. The sun hit him hard, gold light against a long black coat. She's mine now, he said. The nearest gunman jerked, startled that he'd actually stepped out. Jonas raised the rifle. The crack split the air like lightning. The man dropped without a sound. The others dove for cover. Horses screamed, dust boiling up from their hooves. Jonas moved like the land itself. Low, deliberate, unhurried. He fired again, and another man folded into the dirt. Damn it, Clay, the merchant shouted. You don't want this fight. Jonas's voice came back calm, echoing across the canyon. Didn't come looking for it. A pause. Just the wind now, whispering through the rocks. Then the merchant snarled, "You can't hide from what you were." Jonas's eyes narrowed. "Ain't hiding." He stepped out from cover, rifle leveled. The third man tried to flank him, a younger one, fast with his draw, confident in it. Jonas fired before the gun cleared leather. The echo rolled down the canyon walls. 3 shots, 3 bodies, dust settling. Only the merchant remained, crouched behind his horse, trembling. Mary Lou stood in the doorway now, small and pale, holding the rifle Jonas had given her that night by the fire. "Stay back," Jonas said without looking. But she didn't move. Her hands shook, eyes locked on the merchant. "You remember me, girl?" The merchant called out, voice cracking. "You were nothing when we took you in. I fed you, clothed you, kept you alive. You sold me," she said quietly. He laughed, a hollow, ugly sound. "You were worth less than the sack I traded you for." Jonas raised his rifle. The merchant ducked lower. Mary Lou stepped forward. "Don't." Jonas turned, surprised. Her voice was calm. "Let me." The merchant's sneer faltered. "You ain't got the stomach, girl." The rifle shook in her hands. Jonas watched, saw the tremor, the fear, and beneath it something steady, growing like fire in dry brush. "Don't make her do this," Jonas said. The merchant shifted. His hand twitched toward his belt. The sunlight caught the edge of his revolver. Just enough. Mary Lou fired. The sound echoed through the canyon, rolling like thunder. The merchant fell backward, dust puffing up around him, eyes open but seeing nothing. The silence that followed was the kind that felt alive. Jonas stood there, breathing slow, rifle still in hand but lowering now. The girl's face was blank. No tears, no triumph. Just stillness. He walked to her, knelt down, and took the rifle gently from her grip. "You did what you had to." She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did," he said softly. "And that's all right." Behind them, the wind moved through the canyon again, carrying the dust away, erasing footprints, making ghosts of what had just happened. Jonas dragged the bodies one by one to the edge of the dry wash and covered them with stones. The merchant last. When he finished, he stood for a long while, staring at the mound of rocks. Then he said quietly, "They'll come again." Mary Lou stood beside him, small against the emptiness of the desert. "Who will?" "The ones who sent them." She looked up at him. "You knew this would happen." "I did." "Then why'd you stay here?" He glanced at her, eyes tired, voice low. "Because running don't fix ghosts, girl. Facing him does." The wind tugged at his coat, sent the dust spinning in small circles. He looked out across the mesa, endless, gold, and cruelly beautiful. "You did good," he said finally. She didn't answer. She just looked toward the horizon, where the sun was falling red behind the cliffs, and whispered, "Are we safe now?" Jonas shook his head. "Safe ain't a thing you find out here. But you could buy a little peace if you're willing to pay for it." He turned back toward the cabin, his shadow long across the dirt. The girl followed close, silent except for the scuff of her boots. Inside, he set the rifle back on its pegs, poured 2 cups of water, and sat. Mary Lou sat across from him, her small hands wrapped around the tin cup, eyes fixed on the doorway. After a long silence, she asked, "What were you before all this?" Jonas stared at the wall, at the badge and the cross that hung side by side. A man who thought killing solved things. And now, he looked at her, a man who knows it don't. The fire popped in the hearth, throwing shadows across his face. Outside, the last light faded from the canyon, and the sound of the wind rose again, soft, steady, endless. Jonas leaned back in his chair, eyes heavy, voice no more than a whisper. "They'll come again, Mary Lou. But next time," he reached for the rifle, laying it across his knees. "We'll be ready." The church bell was ringing when Jonas rode into Dry Creek. It wasn't Sunday, and the sound wasn't holy, it was warning. Dust rolled behind his horse like smoke, and every window shutter creaked shut as he passed. Folks whispered his name as if it might draw lightning. He reined in before the saloon, the same one where he'd first seen Mary Lou. The same sun hung over the street, but everything else had changed. 5 horses stood tied outside. Bounty men, hard faces behind the glass. One of them stepped out, broad-shouldered, the kind who'd killed for pay and slept fine after. Jonas Clay, he said, voice heavy with old rumor. Didn't think the pale rider would come walking back to town. Jonas dismounted slow, every motion deliberate. Ain't riding a hide, he said. The man's hand hovered near his gun. You know there's a price on you, old ghost. Dead or alive, don't much matter. Jonas stepped closer. Don't it? The man flinched, just enough for Jonas to see it, and the crowd watching from doorways fell silent. Then the saloon doors opened again, and the merchant's widow stepped out. No fear, no tremor. Behind her, Mary Lou stood, hat low, rifle in hand, her eyes hard as flint. The lead bounty man smirked. That your little orphan? Heard she put down the man paid to feed her. Mary Lou raised the rifle an inch. Jonas's voice stopped her. Don't. He looked back at the men. She's not yours to talk about. A voice rose from the boardwalk. The old town preacher, trembling but clear. She's the sheriff's blood, you fools. That child's her father's justice. Come to claim what's owed. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The bounty men shifted uneasy. Jonas turned to the widow. Tell em. Her hands clenched at her sides. Mary Lou's mine, she said. My husband, the sheriff, was gunned down years back by the same outlaws that sold her off. They took her to bury what they'd done. Gasps, curses, the scrape of boots. The truth spread faster than fire in dry grass. The bounty man snarled. Stories don't change, what's owed. He drew first. Jonas moved faster. The crack of his revolver split the morning clean in half. The man dropped, gun still half raised. The rest scattered for cover. Bullets screamed down the street. Jonas ducked behind a wagon, firing once, twice, calm as rain. Mary Lou's shot rang out beside him, perfect sharp. One man fell from the saloon balcony before his rifle hit the ground. Stay low, Jonas shouted, moving through the smoke and dust. He fired again, another man down. The last gunman tried to run for his horse, but the widow stepped from the doorway, shotgun braced against her hip. One thunderous blast sent him sprawling. Then silence. Just the echo of gunfire fading into the canyon beyond town. Jonas stood in the middle of the street, smoke rising from his gun, chest heaving. The townsfolk emerged slowly, faces pale, eyes wide. The preacher crossed himself. The blacksmith muttered, Lord above, he's still the pale rider. Jonas holstered his weapon. Not anymore. He turned to Mary Lou. The girl's hands trembled, but her eyes stayed fixed on him. You said they'd come again, she whispered. He nodded. They always do, but not anymore for you. The widow came forward, her voice breaking. You saved her. You saved us. Jonas looked away. No, I just finished what others started. He walked to his horse, every boot step echoing in the dust. The girl followed. Where will you go? He smiled faintly, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. Where I'm needed least. She caught his sleeve. You don't have to go. Jonas looked down at her, the face of a child who'd seen too much but still believed the world could change. You got a family now, he said softly. Don't waste it. He touched the brim of his hat to the widow, swung into the saddle, and turned toward the open road. The town watched in silence. As he passed the edge of Dry Creek, the preacher called after him, voice trembling with reverence. What are we supposed to tell the next generation, Mr. Clay? Jonas reined in, turned his head slightly, the sun a burning halo behind him. Tell him justice rides quiet, he said, and mercy don't wear a badge. He kicked the horse into motion, dust rising like smoke in his wake. The wind caught his coat, snapping it like a flag. By the time the sun reached its peak, the road was empty, just the whisper of hooves fading into the horizon. Mary Lou stood at the edge of town, watching until he became a shimmer in the heat. The widow laid a hand on her shoulder. He'll come back someday. The girl shook her head. No, ma'am. He already did. And somewhere out beyond the mesas, the wind carried the sound of that old bell again, slow, distant, echoing through the canyons like a ghost remembering its name. They say he rode alone until the end of his days, chasing no man, running from none. But whenever the desert went quiet at dusk and the stars burned sharp as bullets in the sky, the folks of Dry Creek would swear they could still see him, a lone rider against the dying light, fading slow into legend. The man who bought mercy with nothing but his word. The pale rider who took her home.